Welcome everyone to our webinar, Getting Your Garden Ready for Winter. My name's Emily Becker. I'm the Gardening Program Coordinator at Rural Cap. And with me here is Yael Hickok. Yael, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi there. I am more about fruit trees and shrubs because I manage Boyer's Orchard and Greenhouse. So that's my angle on preparing your things for the winter time.
Great. And this webinar is brought to you a collaboration between Rural Cap, whose mission is to improve the lives of low-income Alaskans, and our partners over at Tribes Extension, who are interested in improving food security for tribes. Okay. I was experimenting with the cool new layout things, but I'm not gonna mess around with it today. Okay. All right. So what are we doing? Let's see. Why are we prepping now? We want to, I'd say our biggest goal is we're going to be looking to improve our soil health. And we're doing things now that will help us immensely in spring. We also, of course, want to protect our plants from frost damage, from pest damage. We're going to save time and money. And the whole point in doing this now is that Mother Nature will be working 24/7 all through the winter, beneath the snow, and she'll be helping us get ready for spring. And if we do it now, it's way better than trying to get everything done in May when you have about a million things to do. And by the way, please, as we're going, put questions in the chat, and I'm going to try to stop after each section to take questions. So I'll start with soil health here because this is the big one. Okay, come on. All right. Okay, so possible resources for garden prep. I just like to keep this up here because we're all in different parts of Alaska and we have different resources at our disposal. In particular, obviously here in Anchorage, I can go and get bucket after bucket of spent grain from all the breweries, but there's lots of different things you should be thinking about collecting for, soil health purposes. So if any of these look good to you, you have these on hand. Be thinking about how you can source these and how you can store them and get them ready to use in your garden this month. All right, so we are going to cover our bare soil. This is a potato bed we just dug up at one of the Rural Cap supportive housing sites. We dug it up last week, and we are not going to leave it like this. Okay, so we are not letting soil go bare because Mother Nature does not like bare soil, and she will fill that in pronto, probably with something that you don't want. All right, so in this case, this was a potato bed. It was really not that weedy. So I am probably going to cover it with compost. And that could be what you can find. Like if you're in Southeast, you might have seaweed. I can go to the breweries and get buckets of spent grain. I can get bags of coffee grounds from Pilates. And then, of course, you can get leaves. So whatever you have at your disposal, you are going to cover this. The purpose, of course, again, I'm talking about weed suppression, but you're also adding organic material to the soil. Again, Mother Nature will be working on decomposing that all winter so that the whole soil food web in the underground there is working on making those nutrients available to your plants. And that's going to be happening, all winter. If you wait till May, you can still do that, but why not get started now? And of course, if you wanted to make a new bed, this is a perfect time. The best time to make a lasagna bed is in the fall because all of those things have time to decompose and just again make nutrients available for your plants. All right, Yael, anything on that you want to add in?
Yeah, I would say that this is also the best time because you have access to a lot of things like the leaves and mulch and that kind of thing. So your springtime you will thank your fall time you if you get a lot of this stuff done now.
Yes. I know. I always say to my, and in the spring, I'm always like, oh, I love that girl. Thank you.
That's right.
Um, and Lee has asked like $100 million question. Is there anything to do to get ahead of slugs? Um, that's a really good question. And I know. So the CES has a great publication on slugs, and Joey Slowick is the slug master. He recommends using like rough mulch in between your beds. I definitely, I would say it's lower on my priority list of like re-wood chipping my pathways. That's something I'm going to do in the spring, but kind of thinking ahead to like using some rough mulch in between your beds is good. Like he even suggests gravel, and he also suggests tilling the soil in between your beds. And that's, that's you want to kind of remove all that any sort of slug habitat that's nice.
Emily, another idea
Yeah.
is like, for instance, my chickens are not allowed in my vegetable garden until after I harvest, but then I let them loose and they are great at finding those slugs for me. And ducks,
Awesome
very
idea.
different from what I understand.
Awesome. All right. And if other people have ideas, please put them in the chat. So speaking of disturbing the soil, there's a place for tilling, but basically, I am cutting back plants just to the base of the plant. I'm not digging up the roots right now. I know like it sort of goes against our whole like impulse to be tidy, and I do like things tidy, but we are not pulling out the roots of these plants. I think this was maybe a sunflower or maybe a kale stalk, who knows? But if you really need to, you can pull it out in the spring, and in the spring it'll be easy to pull out because all those things will be dead. But really, we are trying to disturb our soil as little as possible. We know that science backs this idea that the soil food web is more robust when we don't mess with it. Now, obviously, like I just showed you that picture of we're digging up potatoes, and in that case, yeah, I'm like, kids love tossing the soil this way and that. And it's just, so there's no like absolute rules, but if I can, I'm going to disturb the soil as little as possible here. Okay. Now, this is a fun, I would say, a matter of some debate, and I think Mother Nature has many different ways that she does things, and they all work out. So this, I took a picture of this at the depot. The squash mavens have harvested their squash, and they've done what's called chop and drop, and that's sort of a permaculture uh, terminology. Basically, they have cut back all of the vegetation and they are leaving it right there just to mulch in place. They probably are going to go back and cover that with leaves and maybe some other compost if they have it, if they can get brewery waste or whatever they have on hand, they may even cover that. Your other option obviously is to build a compost pile, but chop and drop is definitely, it's an easy way to just save time and just mulch in place right there. If you want to remove it, you can. Some people say, oh, if it's diseased or whatever, you should remove it. Honestly, I don't think it matters that much. You just chop it up, drop it there, and you don't even have to chop it into pieces, but just leave it. All right. Okay, so covering your bare soil, if you have a weedy bed, okay, so like this was one of the beds at a supportive housing site that Rural Cap has that was really filled with weeds. And honestly, I think that it goes back to when it was planted. We have this impulse to like clear off the weeds and dig around till everything looks good. And I mean, I'm sure if you're a gardener, you know that all you are doing when you do that is bringing weed seeds to the surface, and then you just have more trouble. So this is what I do with the weedy bed. I just cut all the plants off at the base, and I'm using newspaper to cover the soil and then I got coffee grounds and spent grain there. So this will smother the weeds, but I'm not using cardboard because cardboard does take a little bit longer to break down. And in the spring, this bed will be a good place for, kind of just poking a hole through that newspaper and putting a start in there. So this is kind of how I rehab, you know, a spot that was really, really super weedy. Um, Questions about that, or anybody have other advice what they do with a weedy bed? Well, let's see. I see a comment here. Spent grain in 5 gallon buckets. This is the beauty of doing it now. If it was springtime, I'd kind of want to make sure there's maybe a couple inches. In the wintertime, you can just dump it on, just dump it. Like I'd aim for like 2 or 3 inches thick. Um, Moose cleaning out anything left in the beds. I have never had that. But they do like the choice things. They have so much food right now. They're not going to go with, you know, they're going to eat your best broccoli and your best items. And no, Annette, the coffee, it's not a big deal, especially if you do it now, because again, it'll get snowed on, it'll freeze. Coffee can make sort of a thick layer that can sometimes get water phobic, and that's kind of a pain, and so you have to mix it in. But I find that that's only a problem if I'm doing that in the spring or summer. Like really winter time, you can just slop it on there. And I put the compost is on top of the newspaper. That's a good question. I hadn't finished. I might have run out of materials there, Kathy. But yeah, I had the newspaper down and then I'm going to cover it with compost. And I did, like hardly anybody gets the newspaper anymore. So I save everything. You can use like thin, obviously any papers you have, that will work, like thin cardboard or
Grocery bags, the
oh
paper
yeah.
grocery bags are great for that.
Yes,
Yeah.
grocery bags. Yeah. I even stopped by the Anchorage Daily News office because I need a ton. I work with all these different community gardens and they were super nice and gave me a big load of newspapers. All right. So, just showing you, this is, my favorite place to go is Broken Tooth in Fish Creek. And they are open like kind of 9 to 4 hours, and then of course midnight sun on the weekends. I pretty much in Anchorage everybody knows where to go to get brewery waste, but yes, I'm filling my truck 10 buckets at a time and going around to the different gardens that I go to. And here I'll stop for a second and ask those of you in rural Alaska, where are you sourcing your compost items? And you can unmute or put it in the chat. Yes, so seaweed from the beach is a really good one. We don't, even though Anchorage is a coastal city, and I will die on that hill, people always forget us. We don't really have seaweed. So, oh, ooh, so fish scraps. That's a great idea. If you can get your hand on fish scraps, and you just bury them even a foot deep. Yes, coffee grounds. A great idea if you have a coffee place in your community is to bring them a clean bucket with your phone number written on the lid and ask them, just to dump things in there and then call you when it's full and you come back with a clean bucket and just keep swapping it out. Um, I had a friend that they'd pulled out a fish to cook and then like some emergency happened and they had to leave town. Anyway, they came back and they had all this stinky fish in their refrigerator and they asked me if I wanted them. Of course I did. And I buried them over at Airport Heights Elementary, and it was some of like the most phenomenal beds ever. And it did not smell. A foot of soil on it, it's not going to smell. Maybe if you're a bear, you can smell it, but okay. This is a bed I rehabbed this summer, and you can see, so I'd put down the newspaper and I covered it with coffee grounds. You can see grass is still coming up in some places around the edges and in the middle, but it's way, way better than what it was in the spring. I just couldn't, there was no way I was going to dig it out. And
Was that all grass beforehand? Was it solid
mhm,
grass? Okay.
solid grass. Yes. And
That
it's
would be
like,
a lot of work to dig all that up. So you're
yeah.
giving
And
yourself a ton of work there.
ton of work, and it doesn't even work because you're just like bringing all the weed seeds back up to the top.
Mhm.
So smothering and smother with newspaper, cardboard, whatever you can find, and get that compost on there. Oh, and Roz is using leaves. Yes, she's got an electric fence, which actually are not that expensive anymore. Um,
Emily,
and
there
Nick,
was a question earlier. I'm not sure if you answered it. Do you put the compost on top of the newspaper or the other way around?
it's on top of the newspaper. Yes. Yep. That's the whole smothering. And no, you do not need to break down the leaves. Just pile them on. It's a great thing to do, especially if you don't have weeds, leaves will do the trick, but you probably want to add some compost too. Yes, horse or chicken manure, great time to add it. So manures have obviously are a vector for pathogens. You want to be careful. People talk about, oh, they need to be composted, you know, to a certain temperature. And I would say that's true if you're adding it in the spring. Um, if you have the time to compost it, great, but you could put manure right on these raised beds now. And again, that's Mother Nature working all winter, and you can just leave it on the top. And then in the, depending on what you're going to plant there, if I'm using manures, I'm going to plant things that need to be cooked, that will have a kill step. Like I'm not going to plant lettuce in manure, but yeah, you can add it just on the top right now. That's the beauty of getting this done in the fall because it will be safe for you in the spring. Ooh, nice. Pig manure mixed with straw and kitchen scraps. That sounds awesome. A friend of mine told me that the Alaska Zoo gives away yak manure. They have it in bags, sitting next to the place where you can drop off like fish and apples and things like that. I don't live near there. I've never seen it. I've driven and I'm always like spying because I'm always looking for stuff like this. So I've never seen it, but I have heard that they so be on the lookout for blue bags of yak manure from the zoo if you're in Anchorage. All right.
One
Okay.
more,
So,
one
oh,
more
go ahead.
suggestion is rhubarb. Those big rhubarb leaves are also, and just you're going to be in the garden anyway. If you don't have access to anything else, they make a good temporary weed suppressor.
Ooh, awesome. Yes, great idea. Okay, so now should you add other organic fertilizers? So if you go online and Google, like, should I fertilize in the fall? Everything will come back and say, no, don't fertilize in the fall. And I would say this is where Alaska is different.
Mhm.
A couple years ago, I was visiting Les Brake. He used to live in Willow. He's the coyote gardener. And he told me that after the ground freezes, he adds fish bone meal to all of his beds. And I started doing that a few years ago. So again, I'm not doing it now. I know Fairbanks, you guys have had frost already. I'm going to wait until the ground is frozen, and then I'm going to add this in a kind of a thick layer. And I am so happy with this. I feel like, we don't have, at least maybe in Southeast you do, we don't have the winter rains. Hopefully we won't have the winter rains that could wash this away. The ground pretty much stays frozen, but as soon as it's warming up in the spring, again, Mother Nature's going to be working on this and having all those microbes in the soil, decomposing the stuff and making it available for my plants. And I feel like I don't, when I plant my starts, I might add a little bit of fish emulsion and I don't fertilize the whole rest of the summer because I've added so much organic material in the fish bone meal in the fall. And I know Iva and Iva bought a 50-pound bag from Mill and Feed the other day. This is the good stuff from Kodiak. Iva, do you remember how much that cost?
I think it was like $80, something
Okay,
like
for a
that.
50, yeah, for a
So
50-pound bag,
yeah.
which should, I mean, that would last me a couple years, but I have a small space. Um, anyway, I'd be curious to hear what you guys think about this, adding fertilizers in the fall or not. And I'm taking a look at the chat here. Oh, Katie has a word of wisdom for manures. Hmm. Yeah, so there's always you know, it's hard to know. I do get grass clippings from a friend of mine that runs he's got a lawn service, and it's something that I always ask, like, hey, are you adding any, if you get weed and feed in there, you don't want it. I don't know enough about the medications and manures to really comment on that. All right, Annette, liquid fertilizer in the fall. I probably wouldn't do liquid fertilizer because so the whole point of the liquid fertilizer is that it's more immediately bioavailable to your plants. Um, so I'm not doing that. The bone meal, it takes a while to be composted enough to be available for your plants. And yeah, so Alex is asking about rain in the southeast. So I kind of wonder if maybe this is something you guys would not do, like maybe you're sorry, more like the lower 48, and that they warn about it just getting washed away. I don't really have birds messing with it, but cover it with leaves for sure. Um, So Melissa, I don't think it matters whether the bone meal's on top or below the compost, but I would cover it with leaves. So at the end of this, I'm gonna get some leaves and sort of cover it up. Yael, anything to add on that comment?
So we do occasionally get the warming Chinook winds that can blow everything away. So one tactic I've done is to put the leaves on top, then wash them with my hose, then put the hose away and everything so that the leaves will freeze in place. I have done that in the past.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Mm.
All right, and Kirsty, who's in Seward, she scratches the bone meal in the summer. Yeah, okay, gets pasty. If you don't sort of mix it in. Yeah, and again, like I'm not really in the fall time, I'm not mixing in, I'm just putting this layer down and Mother Nature's gonna take care of it for me. She's so great.
Yeah.
All right. Of course, I'm sure everybody here is building a compost pile. I never have enough compost that I need. But this time of year, as I'm cutting down all of these plants, if I'm not, just leaving them on the beds, I've got piles and piles and piles of, green material that I can use. And so I'm building an extra compost pile. And I have, I struggle a lot with, I've got some invasive campanula, so I make sure to put down a bunch of, you can see there, I've got cardboard and burlap there, just sort of protecting it. I don't want any campanula growing into my compost pile, although it happens, it happens. So I've got all this green stuff. I'm going to layer in coffee grounds. I basically just build that up and then I put a, very simple tarp, like a plastic bag or something over it and keep it down with rocks. And that will pretty much, obviously by, springtime, it's going to be reduced by like 75%. And I love using this stuff in the bottom of like, if I've got pots for dahlias or potato bags, this is a great thing to put in the bottom of those. It's almost like you're creating soil, and it'll be just superb by the end of next year. All right. Yes, Annette, do not be afraid of composting. I was going to say, it's like there's so many different ways to do things. And honestly, if, composting is really just doing what Mother Nature does automatically, and you're just speeding it up. And, there's all kinds of rules that do not need to be followed. I mean, basically, I'm building a pile of stuff and that's it. And then you walk away. It's really amazing. Nature will do almost all of the work. So I will say it needs to be large because that kind of gets it going, gets it heated up. But even if it doesn't heat up, you've got this, fungal colonies in there that are going to be working all the time. But as far as size, I, think like at least a cubic yard. So think 3 feet, 3 feet, 3 feet. As big as you can, because it's going to shrink right away as everything starts decomposing. And how long does it take to break down? It's really,
Depends what's in there.
yeah. And do you need like finished compost? It really depends on what you're doing. I tend to use like, this crazy pile, I'll just use it, wherever it sort of needs to go, like intuitively. You'll start to just, move it around. And honestly, I wouldn't stress about it. It really does work just fine. All right. Okay. So we're going to protect our perennials. People ask me about strawberries all the time. I've got this strawberry planter. It's at one of our rural cap supportive housing sites. And what we're going to do is we're going to wait for the sucker to freeze. Okay. So it needs to freeze. I'm going to take it apart so you can see there's it's like a tier. It comes apart. I'm going to put those on the ground, the frozen ground, and then I'm going to cover it with leaves as much as I can. Like it would be great to cover it, at least like 6 inches above the pot. And I have lots of strawberries in hanging baskets, and I do the same thing. You wait for them to freeze solid, and then you cover them. The whole idea is they should not thaw at any time during the winter. Okay, leave them covered. Other perennials, like gosh, your peonies, you're going to cut back the foliage. But in my early years, I should really write a book about mistakes I've made gardening. But I think I had a kiwi vine, and I thought, oh, you just like all the leaves died, and I cut it back. That poor thing. You were not supposed to cut that. Don't cut your kiwis. And also don't prune your fruit trees now. Yael, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, people are tempted to prune those fruit trees and shrubs. You can cut back the shrubs a little bit, like your raspberries and stuff, but do not do any pruning on your trees because you're going to invite winter kill into those branches. There's not sufficient time for the tree to heal those cuts right now. It's tempting, but because you see all the leaves fall off and you see, things that are dying or need some attention, save that for the spring. If need be, you can always mark it with some tape or line or something to help you remember where you're going to cut it. But this is not the time to prune your fruit trees. You're going to wait to do that. Yeah.
Great. And Kathy, you're talking about removing the soil from your raised bed. You're sort of, are you moving it around? I don't, why are you digging out the soil from your raised bed?
So to preserve the structure of the raised bed. Oh, so the raised bed doesn't fall apart.
Oh, okay. I mean, trying to think, soil ends up getting moved all around. Somebody was, I think someone even, oh, it's very heavy about collapsing it. Yeah, I think, you can, if you're taking some soil out, like if you can, I would put, I'd put some of those high nitrogen items, seaweed, spent grain, coffee, anything that you can, I would put in there, and some bone meal would be great if it doesn't ruin the structure. And then, hi, Geraldine. So my compost pile, I do add wood chips to that, so thank you. So yes, so you want to add in some browns. It's really, again, it'll work either way. It's just one of those things that is super easy to do when you have all winter for Mother Nature to work on
So
it.
you don't really have to be concerned about, the ratio of browns to greens, just kind of throw it. I've been doing that, just cutting all my stuff, throwing it in there, and I have a spare pile of leaves, and I just cover it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. And wood chips are also great for a compost pile.
Great.
And some of you probably know, like, if you're thinking about mulching, we tend to use, wood chips around perennials, not around your annuals. Like, I'm not going to be adding wood chips to my vegetable beds. They're just too carbony. So, but wood chips in your compost pile, especially for us, one that you've built in the fall, is a great. All right, and then Yael, you want to take this one about fertilizing and composting for fruit trees this time of year?
Yeah, we did do a webinar about pruning last winter. You should be able to access, or it was not winter, it was more like early spring.
It feels like it was a year ago.
And yes, you can add fertilizers, manures, and those kinds of things around the base of your tree, but do not put it so thick that the ground is warm. So we're not going to try to make a compost pile at the bottom of the tree this time of the year, for a couple of reasons. One, you don't want things touching the trunk of the tree too much. That's going to introduce moisture, pathogens, and critters. Also, you want the ground to freeze, just like when we're talking about the strawberries. You need to let the tree freeze and stay frozen if possible. So using leaves and mulch, and as you can see here, some burlap, those all are things that you can do, but don't try to warm up the soil. Don't try to build a compost at the bottom of it right now. This is the time to protect your tree. So do you want me to go ahead and get into that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So there's here in South Central Alaska, you're going to need to protect your tree from 3 different things. For 3 different critters. Those are the voles. And so many people will come to me and say, I planted the tree, it looked great, it was doing so good. And then I came out in the spring and everything is dead. And maybe it looks like someone weed whacked your tree. That's what I kept accusing my husband of, killing my trees and weed whacking them. Finally, my sister said, no, he's not weed whacking, because you can see the grass is still around. It wasn't weed whacking, it's voles. And they will, before the ground is completely thawed, and when there's still snow on the ground, those voles will start digging underneath, and they'll make tunnels. They'll find your fruit trees and they'll eat the bark underneath, especially the younger trees. They love that stuff. So voles are going to be from the ground up to the first probably 6 inches. And then you're going to have rabbits that are going to get into also the same time of year when they can't find anything else and they're starving. They're going to eat the cambium layer, eat the greenish bark layer of your trees, especially apple trees are a favorite, but any fruit tree is susceptible. And then the rabbits they'll get up on top of the snow. And we had a horrible year 2 or 3 years ago at Boyer's Orchard, where the rabbits had tons and tons of snow. So the rabbits weren't able to access other foods, and they were climbing on top of the snow and getting the young trees, and they will girdle them and destroy them, eating the branches and everything. And then above the rabbits, then you've got the moose or the deer to deal with. So hopefully you've got your tree fenced in. So many times I've heard it, oh, the moose don't leave, they take my neighbor's trees. Well, that might have worked for 2 or 3 years beforehand, but the first time they find your tree, and they're going to tell their friends, and they're going to tell their offspring, and your tree they're coming for your tree, and it's going to be in early spring is when they're going to get it, or sometimes in the winter time, but most likely in the early spring when they're coming down off the mountains and all of that. So 3 layers that you need to think about how to protect your tree. There's a lot of different things that you can use. If you're in a pinch and you haven't gotten anything else, you didn't go to the store and you didn't get your tree guards, you can always use tin foil, several layers of tin foil that you can wrap around it. The problem with tinfoil is it's going to be harder to take off in the springtime. And you do need to take something, if it's not a breathable material, like a mesh, or what we call, what do we call it?
Carpenter cloth?
Hardware cloth, thank you. Hardware cloth is not actually a cloth. It's a wire mesh fencing with really small gauge holes. But if you go to the store, Lowe's or whatever, you're going to ask for hardware cloth, or if you order it online. So that's another product. Recently, we had someone order some plastic mesh cloth that you can cut a little more easily. Anything that's mesh, you can leave that on as a protector year round, as long as it's not going to girdle your tree. If you're doing something solid like this white plastic that's being shown, that's not allowing your bark to breathe, which is fine in the wintertime, but you're going to have to remove that in the early spring. Do not leave that year round. You've got to take that off. So those are the things you're going to do to protect your tree. Another year when I was short on some supplies, I just cut up the burlap, or you can cut up the weed fabric, the commercial weed fabric, into strips and just wrap that around the base of your tree. I've become less and less of a fan of that commercial plasticky weed fabric. And so with the stuff that I have laying around, I can use that as a tree guard, just wrap that around, and then just remember to take it off again in the springtime. So those are some of the things that you have to consider. Plastic cones. Okay. Yeah, there's all sorts of products out there. Just pay attention to, is it breathable or not? Because that's going to tell you whether you need to take it off in the springtime or not. So.
Thank you. Yeah, this picture on the right, you can see the cage just at the bottom. This was that year where we had all that snow, and that was rabbit damage. You can see they nibbled, and they did not girdle the tree, so it's still alive, but it has this wound that's been healing. Is there anything, I feel like, Yael, I'm sort of like the lazy gardener.
I am too. I am all about the laziness. That's why I try to choose products that I don't have to take off again in the spring. So it might be a little more work to order them online now, or to cut up that mesh or whatever, but it will, whatever you do, make sure there's room for it to expand a little bit, for the tree to grow and for it to breathe. Otherwise, you do need to remove it. Girdling the tree if someone needs it. So here's some other products that you can use. The one with the smaller holes, the square holes, that's what hardware cloth is. And the nice thing about that is it's a little more bendy. So if you don't have a tree that has a straight trunk, it gives you a little bit more room to work with. The other one has the big circular holes. That is a combination of plastic and metal that's being used there. And you see both of those are being used in such a way that there's room for the tree to grow for a couple of years, but you do need to keep an eye on it. And if it becomes too tight, you've got to remove that. Those are both at the orchard that we take care of. So girdling means that it's gone all the way around the tree, the cambium layer, even if it's only a few centimeters. If the damage is done all the way around the tree, it'll kill it. If it's only done on one side, or if it leaves a strip, then the cambium will just reroute itself. The phloem and xylem will reroute itself through that area. How do you keep moose from eating the top of your trees? Well, wouldn't we all like to answer that? If it's a young tree, I've used burlap before. I've wrapped them in burlap, but also make sure that you stake it as well, because that burlap will hold all that snow. It'll become heavy. It'll pull your tree down. But really young trees, like ones that I just planted within a couple of years in my yard, I wrap them in burlap. If you have a bigger space, I'm just really going to encourage you to use fencing.
And that's what we have here in this picture. These are fruit trees that are planted at Airport Heights Elementary, and so that involves the stakes and the caging, and it's I can't remember, it must be at least 6 feet high or so. Is that, I can't remember what the standard is.
Yeah.
And they're also doing a couple things here. They've got the cardboard because this is a place where there was a ton of bird vetch. So they're smothering that bird vetch. They're covering it with wood chips, which will also help keep the weeds down. And as the wood chips decompose, they're going to feed the trees. So they still need to do the caging of the trunks here, but yes, they've got the fencing up and they're mulching it so that both weeds and feeding the soil here.
Yeah, speaking more about those young trees and how to take care of them, you may want to stake that tree, even if you don't need fencing around it specifically. Just stake it in the wintertime to give it a little extra support against the snow is a good idea. Another product that you can use to keep the moose from eating is, and it also will ward off rabbits and voles, is called plant skid. But I only use that in an emergency. So that year that we had the rabbits coming in, I went and got some plant skid and I sprayed it on all of our trees. It did work to keep them away. It's essentially cow's blood, I believe, or some kind of bovine blood. It's disgusting. It looks like a bloodbath when you're done. It's not fun to use and it's expensive. So I don't rely on that. You know, I've heard all sorts of things like Irish Spring soap and several other things that you can hang from your tree. Those are all nice ideas. I don't have experience with using those, but those are, you know, the best thing is physical protection from that moose. So.
All right, yes, and here's just another example. I think I put some compost, like I think I actually put apple, you know, from the apple puree from after
Mash. Yeah.
mash after being, yeah, I put that underneath here and then covered it with wood chips and hoping that we don't have snow that goes over the tops. Although I guess some people want that, but not me. Okay. All right. So moving into maybe some organizational things. So this is the time to get the pots you're going to need in the spring, clean them and store them someplace that's accessible. I live in a 900 square foot house, you know, that I share with somebody else. So all my garden stuff is outside, which means, you know, come March, I'm digging for it, but at least I've gotten a system down. I have like a little outdoor storage container. And I keep my trays without holes in them and my pot, like my starter pots, they're in the top of the storage thing. So all I have to do is go out there and shovel up the snow and get it. But I'm very like, I'm very particular about making sure I have all these pots that I need. And it's funny because my neighbor who was just giving away all of her pots, I was like, you know, she was asking for pots in the spring. And it's like, you really can do this. I know I was like judging her. You can store your own pots and have them ready. At least, you know, in Anchorage, we have the wonderful depot, and right now it's super tidy and organized, and you can go grab any pots. But this, I mean, this could also be, you know, if you're in rural Alaska, you're saving any of the items that you are going to need in the spring, and just like make a little space for it so you know. So you're not like scrounging around, and God forbid you had to pay for pots. Like it's the one thing I just absolutely refuse to do because, you know, everybody has pots to give away. And my dear husband also took all my winter sewing jugs and hung them up in the back there and under our little lean-to. And it's like perfect. And if you're not winter sewing, you need to do that. That's a whole other webinar. There's tons of resources on YouTube and stuff out there, but I do all my brassicas and tons of things all in winter sewing jugs. And you can do that in February, like when, you know, when nothing else is going on, you can get those seeds started. And if you have your jugs ready, it makes it so much easier. And Kirsty, you know, I do clean my pots. So this is one of the things I love to do on a summer, like a hot summer day, is just like fill a barrel with soapy water, and I do dunk them in bleach. I think it's probably overkill because over at Airport Heights Elementary, we have been using dirty pots for years and years and years because like I'm not cleaning all of those. And it really doesn't matter. You know, I think people, you know, there could be disease pathogens, whatever, but honestly, it's usually just fine. And so I like to, you know, do we have any hot summer days left? Probably not. But, you know, I would at least rinse out your pots and have them ready to go. And yeah, I think we've talked about doing a winter sewing webinar at some point. I know the Master Gardeners did that. And, you know, one thing you could do is just start saving containers. You know, these all look like milk jugs, but you don't need just milk jugs. Probably my favorite thing is you know, you get from Costco those containers of like tomatoes. It's like a big plastic thing, and if you put two of those together, it's like the perfect thing. And I've tried to get, you know, get more, like, use less plastic in my life, but um, uh, the standard is to tape them shut with duct tape, but you can see I just did string and that worked just fine too, because I don't want, like, that's super expensive to use that much duct tape. You can see I'm very cheap. But yes, so have this stuff ready so that you are not scrounging around for it later. And related to that, I do keep all of my kitchen scraps over the winter. And so it's just my husband and myself, and we probably get like maybe 10 5-gallon buckets over the course of the winter. You just keep it outside. If you have not saved your bucket lids, you know, I use like just a piece of cardboard and I just fill that up. It's super gooey and gross in the spring, but it, like, boom, I have like a ready to go big compost pile come May. And if you wanted to get even better, you could put like strips of newspaper, or if you had leaves or something around so that you're layering your browns and greens. I don't do that. I just put all the, you know, kitchen scraps in the buckets and leave them outside, ready to go. It's kind of stinky, but it'll, in a couple days, you mix it up, it'll be fine. Okay, any other questions? Let's see, we're running out of time here. I would say the rest of this is like optional. These are like add-ons of things that, you know, if you have time, you know, with no, even if you get none of these things done, really honestly, no judgment, except for the pots maybe. Save some seeds, you know, it's so, you know, you go out in the garden, it can be overwhelming with the number of things you have to do right now. Maybe if you haven't saved seeds before, pick one kind. Obviously, nasturtiums are super easy to save. I think alyssum, chives, those are all easy ones. I've got these all sitting here like that I've saved. I got some dill seeds, like super easy ones. Pick one and do it. I have never saved tomato seeds yet, and that's my stretch goal this year. I'm going to save some tomato seeds. It's kind of like more involved. You have to like ferment things and everything, but I don't know. I'll figure it out. But yeah, save some seeds because it's fun. It saves you some money. You're going to plant some garlic, I hope. That's coming up very soon. So this was my garlic bed. I added, you can see I just added a bucket of compost. I'm going to mix that in. You want a really nice thick layer of compost when you are planting garlic. I'm going to wait for frost. We need maybe Fairbanks, you guys have already had that. Couple frosts before I plant the garlic. I'm going to top it off with leaves. I'll probably even tarp it. And then the garlic will be ready to go. Definitely something you should do.
I see your dahlias in the background there that you've got to remember to bring those into the garage for the winter because they will not winter over.
Yes, I know. It's so much work. Yeah. All right. And then, you know, if you can, take one of your beloved plants and save it. You know, this ginger mint is something that it was gifted to me by Verna Pratt many years ago. It's now growing in one of our public gardens here in Airport Heights, so like anybody can come harvest it. And it just is fun and reminds me of her, and it's just a wonderful thing to do. Just so you have, you know, your friends keep your friends close to you over the winter. All right, and then this one, I was like, oh, I don't have very many pictures of this because I haven't done it yet. Tidy and clean up. So obviously, this is obvious, like, you know, yes, I have found tools in the spring out there. Okay, you're like, oh, this is where I left that, right out here on the ground where the snow thaws. You know, you start emptying your pots now, like empty out those clay and ceramic pots, get all that dirt into, I store dirt in burlap bags or in garbage cans. Get all that stuff done so that you can rest easy over the winter. Any orchard tips on this, Yael?
Yeah, I know that it's overwhelming and there's a lot of things, but I would say the one thing for the orchard is to wrap your young trees in something to protect them from the voles. So that can be like, if you don't get anything else done, at least do that much because everything else you can kind of recover. you can recover from. But if a vole eats all the way around, it doesn't, like I said, doesn't have to take much, and you'll lose that whole tree.
Thank you. Yes, it's on my list, as you know.
Good.
And then, take notes. And again, no judgment. I was actually looking through my book and I realized I had no notes from 2025. Oh, well. Anyway, sometime in December, inventory your seeds. I think I keep a little spreadsheet. And this is like the perfect thing to do in December because then you can buy more seeds, which is super fun to do. All right. And I also kept results in 2024. I kept a little spreadsheet on like which things that I winter sowed, which things worked and which things didn't. And I obviously did not do that this year. So, oops. And, just think about what did your family love? I feel like I have a security thing. I have to have kale around me, so I have so much kale. My family doesn't necessarily love it, but I do, and I just love to have it. So what do you want to produce more of? Like write it down because you will never remember. Okay, let's see. Questions. Kathy, suggestion on storage of clay pots. You know, mine have really been fine. Obviously empty outside. And yeah, it probably they just crack. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. Any suggestions for her? Sometimes they do crack, and actually I did there was somebody on my local buy nothing page who was looking for like they were making a mosaic and I was like, yay, I can help you. Okay. Oh, Kirsty keeps hers under a picnic table. Nice. Keeps the snow off the pots.
Yeah, I would think that if you can keep it dry, that would help with the cracking, whether it's a tarp or bringing it inside, if that's what you need to do.
Yeah.